That segment of the cider industry is the fastest growing segment of the industry for now 2 years in a row.
Hello, my name is Rhea Windcaller, and I am the producer and cider MC of this weekly podcast, where we speak with makers, cider enthusiasts, and folks within the cider trade from around the world. Bringing us into this here episode was Michelle McGrath, the CEO of the American Cider Association, and she is our featured guest on this here episode 387 of Cider Chat. I had a number of questions for Michelle, beginning with who is the American Cider Association and who does it serve? So we'll be going through that and also discussing some of the key services that the ACA, as it's called, provides to its members. And then we'll be diving into CiderCon 2024, which is coming up this January 2024. The dates are the 15th of January through the 19th. We'll be getting to that featured conversation with Michelle, but first, a wee bit of news from out and about in Ciderville. Typically at this point, I like to talk about events that are going on or different emails I've had coming in. There hasn't been anybody really signing up to the Cider Chat Patreon page in a while, which is always kind of tough because this is listener supported and it does rely on the listeners out there to keep this podcast on the air. So do know that that's a possibility for you. If you're getting some value, do consider becoming a patron. If you're a commercial maker and you've gotten value, please consider joining the Cider Going Up campaign page. You can see all that now at the new website at ciderchat.com. And what I'm most happy about, besides the entire website itself, is the search box. I know I've already been using it myself because you would think that I would remember everything about every episode, but when you're starting to get up in like the high 300 numbers of episodes, it's hard to remember what episode was that I was talking about to rack or not to rack over your cider, or the episode on batonnage. What season was it? I can't remember. But now you could go into the search box and put in those techniques, put in co-ferment, put in CiderCon 2017, and you'll see episodes coming up from that. And it is a tool for you and for me, because I need it, to help us keep on having this bountiful audio file of research. And each podcast episode does have show notes. So that's also a double bonus. If you're doing research about cider, or say you want to find out about particular varieties, or hear John Bunker talk about Apple ID, now you can put that in the search box and get right to that episode, see the show notes, and download it, or then say, okay, I see that's episode 287 or something like that. And then go to your favorite podcast app and you'll be able to download it. I have heard news out in the podcast world that if you are listening to this show here on Google Podcasts, that they're going to be taking off Google Podcasts. So it might be a good time to start switching over into other podcast apps. There's a whole list at ciderchat.com that are some favorites that I use besides Apple Podcasts. So that's one option. Another option, too, is also to listen to Cider Chat on YouTube. And if you are a patron of this podcast, this actual conversation with Michelle is going to be, you're going to get to watch it as a video, fully unedited, at the Cider Chat YouTube channel, where you'll also be able to find all the past podcast episodes and some fun shorts. And there are some bottles on my desk coming up. I have a long list of ciders to be drinking, to be talking about, and to be sharing with you. So a lot happening just at Cider Chat Central. I feel like I've been running a 100-yard marathon for quite a while to get this all done, and it's feeling good. It's feeling like the workflow is getting better, and that's giving me a little bit more spaciousness. So hallelujah for that one. And I hope that it makes your research and your path down the cider trail a little bit easier for you too. So again, just check it all out at ciderchat.com. And while you're there, sign up for the e-cider newsletter, which goes out occasionally, not too often really, to kind of bother you, but just occasionally with just different news of note, including soon I'll be rolling out the French cider tour that's going to both Normandy and Brittany this coming fall 2024 in September. I should be having the exact dates very, very soon. So I know a lot of people have contacted me. I have you on the list to be notified early, but I can't release that just yet, so hang tight. Up next, we're going to be going to our featured conversation with Michelle McGrath, the CEO of the American Cider Association. Let's roll to that next. All righty, we have Michelle McGrath here, the CEO of the American Cider Association, coming live from the West Coast. Super excited to have you on the podcast and bring us up to date with the American Cider Association and the big event coming up in January, which is CiderCon. Before we get to CiderCon, let's talk a little bit about the American Cider Association and who you are and your role. Just so we have an understanding for all the listeners out there in Ciderville who don't really know too much about this organization. Let's start at that point. So who is Michelle McGrath?
That's the question we're always asking ourselves, Rhea, right? Who am I? Well, my name is Michelle McGrath. As I said, I'm the CEO of the American Cider Association, and I live in Portland, Oregon. I've lived in Portland, Oregon for my entire tenure at the American Cider Association, which is going to be 8 years in July. Time flies. And my job at the American Cider Association is to oversee all the various programs that we're doing, drive our strategic plan forward in really making sure that the cider industry is thriving. That's our ultimate goal, and we want to do what we can to support the U.S. cider industry and make it sustainable for everyone. And a big part of that is CiderCon, but other pieces of that include advocacy with TTB or Congress or decision makers or the media. The other part of it is education, and that's education on the behalf of the cider industry, educating sommeliers and retailers, again, the media, the culinary community at large that maybe traditionally underestimates cider and paints the category with a broad brush. We're trying to really get them to understand how diverse and vibrant the American cider community and market really is. So that's a big piece of my job too, is relating with people those messages. And then supporting our members. Like, we want to be a big resource for our members. And so I'm always just a phone call away for anybody that has any questions that maybe I can answer for them, make their life a little easier.
Well, that's perfect. So the American Cider Association is covering the entire United States. Does it also work at all with other countries per se, or is it primarily the U.S.?
We do have some international members, but they're non-voting members. Our mission is specific to the U.S. We collaborate a lot with other countries because, I don't know, I mean, Rhea, you've traveled the cider world a lot more than I have, and I'm often stunned when I do talk to people like Lee Reeve in Japan or, the International Fruit and Wine Cider Organization in Europe, a fledgling cider community and a really old cider community, and yet somehow we have a lot more in common on the state of where cider is than we would think based on that fact alone. So there is a lot of international collaboration, which makes the job fun, but we are really invested in the U.S. market. That is our mission, and that's what we're trying to grow.
Mm-hmm. And just, this is maybe off the top of your head, but maybe it's always on the forefront. Can you give us an idea of how many licensed commercial cideries there are now in the U.S. as of 2023?
Yeah, so we actually had an intern this summer whose entire job was to answer that question because it is way more difficult than it should be
Mm.
to know the answer to that. So right now we're estimating between 1,200 and 1,300. There's some questions on if they're only making cider 1 month a year, do we count them? But it's definitely grown. In 2011, there were maybe 200 commercial cideries, so that's pretty significant growth.
Yeah.
And there is cider being made in commercial cider being made in all 50 states and Washington D.C. So that's exciting.
That's tremendous. So let's talk about your title because I'm just a little curious. When you started off with the ACA, you were the executive director, and now your title is CEO. Is that a change in the organization's mission? Because executive director is normally with a nonprofit, and CEO is a for-profit. Can you just fill us in on that? Because I'm seeing it a little, in different spots where you're still executive director, and that might just be, I know what websites are like to keep up on, no doubt. So just so we know emphatically, this is who you are, your title.
Yeah, I mean the title doesn't matter. My role hasn't changed. The title really was just changed to reflect our peers in DC. So there would be, I would get invited when we were advocating for the Craft Beverage Modernization and Tax Reform Act, which expanded tax credits for small producers. I would get invited to CEO roundtables, and I would be the only one with the executive director title around the table. So it's really just to, you know, fluff up cider's
Makes
fur and
sense.
be like,
Yeah.
hey, we want to sit at the table too. Um, it's
Oh.
it's strategic. Nothing's changed.
All right. Well, I do want to say that I always hear great reviews about Michelle McGrath and how people just adore all the work that you're doing. And of
Oh,
course,
thank
I'm a
you.
big fan too. So, whatever your title is, you're doing the job the right way. And that's really what it comes down to. And totally makes sense from that position on the political level.
Yeah.
So, let's go to a little bit about, we talked about some of the services. Are there any key services that we didn't hit upon that the ACA delivers to its membership?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about advocacy and we talked about education on behalf of the industry, but also like education and information for the industry is something that we're also very committed to. And we just launched a new member resource hub. So if you're a member, make sure you log in and check out all the resources in there. And if you have ideas for additional resources, let us know. We'd love to get them in there. And then, I mean, the other piece that's, I don't know, maybe the most important of all is building community. And we do that through CiderCon, but also just, being a connector, being able to connect people. And I mean, Ria, you're a connector too. So, I think we both have that in common, like being able to see, oh, you should talk to this person
Mm-hmm.
and really making that happen. So, we really want to make information available to our members that is sometimes extremely difficult to find. I have been working on getting the cider imported for CiderCon, and
Mm-hmm.
it's always a good perspective for me to have to experience these things because it's really, really hard.
Wow.
And I shake my head at the end of it and go, I don't know how small cideries make it. This is so much ridiculous red tape. Um, so I should be filling out more winery operation reports or something so that I can have that perspective more often. But yeah.
Well, here's a question. Do you see something that folks are always kind of coming to the ACA for? Is there a common thread that might be surprising for people, or in terms of folks just, a lot of people always kind of feel out of the loop, and that's a little bit we're going to be talking about too, just getting in the loop. But, like there's no dumb questions. So is there anything that you see kind of a repeated inquiry to the ACA? Is it like licensing or that connection, the networking?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is because of our niche, but what I get a lot of phone calls for are people asking for help with data. So one of the things that, in our information services to our members, we've invested a lot in data because nobody else is parsing out cider data. They're just putting it on one line, cider, up or down. So we're trying to really look at what are the regional changes? Are small cideries doing better than large cideries or vice versa? Flavors, packaging, all that. So this is really helpful, even to teeny tiny cideries, if they are pitching investors or pitching a bottle shop to just have some of that or refreshing their business plan. So I get a lot of calls about data, which I have access to in a way that others don't. Yeah. I also get a lot of calls, and it's related to data, but just about trends, like what's next on the cider horizon, from my perspective, which I specifically remember somebody from Europe sitting me down for lunch at Craft Brewers Conference like 7 years ago, telling me that non-alcoholic wine was going to be huge in the US soon. And I thought they were crazy, and I didn't listen to them, and I walked away. So I didn't predict that trend. So I don't know all, but
do you have any predictions now, Michelle?
Well, I am hoping that we get the additional volume sizes approved for wine so that we can start getting more higher ABV ciders that are naturally fermented or, augmented to get the higher ABV levels into different size cans. It seems really unfair to me that higher ABV beer can be in a 16-ounce can, but higher ABV cider can't. And I know that cans are polarizing, but I also know that they're trending and consumers really like them. And I want to get good cider in the mouths of more consumers because once they take a sip, they're going to be hooked.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well said. All right. So let's talk a little bit about who can join the American Cider Association, who can become a member, and maybe as a voting member. Let's start there.
Yeah, sure. So voting members are for bonded wineries because you have to be a bonded winery at the federal level to make commercial cider. And you need to be based in the US. You need to be producing cider in the US. So I guess you could be a international cider company that also, there's probably a couple people that also make cider in the U.S., but really that's what we're looking for is U.S. cider companies.
Makes sense. So that's voting. And then what about enthusiasts, folks who are just cider fans who are like, wow, that sounds like a great conference that's coming up and all the wonderful things you're doing?
Yeah, we have membership levels for enthusiasts, for independent retailers, for suppliers. We're probably going to be expanding the options available to join. Like, I think we're going to be distinguishing between like a home cider maker, an enthusiast, and a professional individual that's maybe, not necessarily in the business, but they are a cider professional. So it'd be a little bit different from somebody who's just a home cider maker because a home cider maker doesn't need access to, our database of state excise taxes, for example, perhaps.
But why that addition there? Why is a home cider maker kind of coming in like that?
Yeah, it's because of our certified cider professional program is growing, and so our target audience for that program are sort of servers and culinary professionals. So let's say somebody's a chef, right? And they're interested in knowing more about cider and being a part of the association, getting them access to those resources as part of their membership makes sense so that we can bring them into the fold.
I love it. That's wonderful. The more the merrier. And it keeps eyes from all different corners of the sector, consumers and commercial makers. Fantastic. So that's your call out there, Ciderville. If you're interested in cider and you want to kind of be at the touchstone, join the American Cider Association. All different tiers and all different price points to be able to join too. Right. Very good.
Yeah. Smaller cideries pay less. It's tiered.
Yeah, makes sense. Can you give us an idea? Is what's the highest percentage of membership coming from? Is it a particular sector?
Yeah. So the American cider community is overwhelmingly comprised of small cideries. Most of the cider makers are small. This is no different than the other sectors.
Mm-hmm.
I think people's view is probably just skewed by what they see on the shelves at, Kroger. Um, so 75% of America's cideries are making less than 50,000 gallons a year or something along those lines. It's
Mm-hmm.
drastically skewed towards small cider makers, as is our membership. We have a lot of very small cideries who belong proudly to the American Cider Association, but we also have middle-sized cideries and the vast majority of the large cideries in the U.S. as well. And I think that's it's what makes the American Cider Association unique is that a lot of the other segments boost their communication platform by infighting. If you vilify somebody, your membership dollars tend to grow. And sometimes the infighting is amongst their own segment. And it's been interesting to see those segments that have split associations are starting to show up on stage together more and more and coming back together because they realize that a rising tide lifts all boats. And so that's sort
Mm-hmm.
of our philosophy at the American Cider Association. And, I work really hard to make sure that CiderCon and our resources and even what we're advocating for is supporting all different types of our members. And I am constantly reminding myself and others that the small cideries are, they're the vast majority of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, very good. That's so, and interesting too, because folks might think differently about that. But yes, it's key, and that also kind of speaks to the volume of sales. Isn't it higher for those direct consumer sales at those small cideries versus the larger market? Is that true? Is that kind of
I don't
or
know if the volume is higher. That's an interesting question. Maybe one for next year's data intern.
all right?
But
Sorry, I'm
but
throwing this at you.
but I do think that I mean, I talk a lot about the data that we provide, but I also understand that people don't see themselves in that data because
Mm,
maybe they're not in chain retail.
right.
And so for the past couple years, we've done a survey specifically for cideries that are making cider in a wine model. They're pressing fruit once a year. They're making cider during a fermentation season, and then that's it. you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, and our surveys, like nobody else is going to measure that information. Like we have to take that on, and we're happy to. And it shows that that segment of the cider industry is the fastest growing segment of the industry for
Mm-hmm.
now 2 years in a row. So
Mm-hmm.
that's something to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And we're really excited to see that growth for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Target audience.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to move on from the ACA, the American Cider Association, and what services you're providing, and talk about the upcoming event, which is called CiderCon. CiderCon 2024 is taking place January 16th through the 19th of the new year in Portland, Oregon. Which I'm sure is really nice for you being Portland based. Let's begin with it's a different venue than it was the last time it was in Portland. It was 2016. This is now on the east side of the river. Can you give us a little idea of what's a little bit different here and why this location, just to give folks a sense of landing there and what to expect?
Yeah. So the conference itself is going to be at the Oregon Convention Center, which is a beautiful convention center. CiderCon has grown since 2016, so it doesn't fit into hotel spaces anymore. So we usually have to find a space where a hotel has a partnership with a convention center.
Mm-hmm.
And the Oregon Convention Center is really beautiful, and the hotel is directly across the street, so it's very convenient. And in between the hotel and the convention center runs the MAX train, which is our light rail. So it's very accessible to Portland neighborhoods. And one of the things that I love about living in Portland is that there are distinct neighborhoods throughout the city with personality. And you can find cider in all of them in various capacities. And so if people want to explore the Alberta Arts District, it's not that far from where we're going to be. If people want to explore Hawthorne or Division, which are kind of two trendy areas, Hawthorne has a Portland cider tap room on it. It's really not that far, so it's a great hub for exploring Portland neighborhoods. Schilling Cider's house is walking distance from the convention center. It's a long walk, but bring your coat.
Yeah. It's warm in January.
Yeah, it's
it's not too bad. Yeah,
it's not too bad at all. It's definitely warmer than Chicago. So,
that's good.
Yeah.
But both locations are great. I just want to ask about Portland. So it's not too far from the airport. It sounds like it does have a major transportation hub coming right to the convention center, so people could take you're calling it the MAX train.
The MAX train, yeah,
right.
And actually the MAX train red line just reopened from the airport to the hotel. And my two little boys have been asking to take the MAX train for years. So this weekend, we're going to drive. I'm going to have my husband drive us to the airport, drop us off, and we're going to take the red line. I'm going to time it and take pictures and share it on our Instagram so that people understand how easy it is to take the MAX train to the hotel this year. It'll literally drop you off at your doorstep. It's pretty cool.
That's fantastic. Well done. And nice to have all those little neighborhoods. So Portland is just a beautiful city, and I think that's a key reason to be thinking about going, because it's all in one central location. But there's other key reasons why to attend CiderCon. So let's touch upon that. Folks who are like contemplating, shouldn't I go? Is it worth the expense? What can you say about like planning that trip, and for folks who are like kind of on the fence, what are some of the reasons that's really key to attend this event?
What I hear from people attending CiderCon is that they are able to network more efficiently than anywhere else they possibly could. It is a gathering place for the cider community around North America and the world, really. Like, it increasingly attracts international attendees. And like the networking is just off the charts. Also, if you're looking to learn, we have a very diverse arena of workshops covering everything from business planning to cider making to compliance. The TTB comes and gives their boot camp every year. And I know people who go to that boot camp every year because the regulations change and the TTB interpretations change. So for folks that are concerned about compliance or just trying to wrap their brain around it, really, CiderCon's a great place. But it's not just for new cider makers. We work really hard to have sort of cutting edge and advanced content as well. So there's something for everyone. So I think my advice to making the most out of it is to plan ahead. And again, I'm always a phone call away. If people want to call me and be like, here's where I'm at in my stage of my cider business, what sessions should I attend? And I can give you my feedback. Also, our trade show is really unique, and it's going to be even more unique this year. So if you think of a trade show as a stuffy corporate thing, that's not CiderCon style. So I think it's nice for folks to get to kind of meet face to face with vendors that maybe they've been shopping around for their cidery equipment. And then, I think abroad sensory education is maybe more common for beverage conferences, but in the US, a lot of the beverage conferences that I've attended don't even have a sensory component. And we really invest in being able to taste a lot of different ciders at CiderCon. So for palate development, it's a really great opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well done. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the things going on. And the first thing that it kicks off in the past, you would really be focusing on Tuesday as the start of CiderCon, but now it's like on Monday. There's a full week, meaning that folks should be landing on Saturday or Sunday at the latest because of the cider tours. So let's touch upon that a little bit. It's pretty exciting. 2 overnight trips up to Washington State, then some local ones in around Oregon Central and a little further out. What can you tell us about those tours?
Well, we're really excited that we're in Portland, Oregon, because we get to work with our great partners at Northwest Cider Association.
Yeah.
And they coordinated these tours for us, which has been awesome. And so, in the 2 overnight tours, one is going to be in Seattle. And the thing that's unique about the Seattle tour is you're going to get to see literally like the entire span of urban cidery models. It's really impressive how different all of the featured businesses are from each other. And it includes dinner at one of the only cider focused restaurants in America. So that's going to be a really unique urban lens on Northwest Cider. And then the other one is going to focus on a more orchard based lens on cider with Eaglemont and Fin River and Alpenfire. And all three of those are a little different from each other too. So, if you're looking for maybe a more bucolic experience, that tour might be for you. And then on Tuesday, if you just want to do a tour on Tuesday, we have a lot of different options as well. So definitely explore the tours. But I would say, like, even if you're not just exploring the tours, Oregon Cider Week is going to be off the hook this year, thanks to our friends at Northwest Cider Association. So make sure that you are checking out the Oregon Cider Week events and seeing how you can plug into those as well.
Great. We'll have a link in the show notes to all that. And let's talk a little bit about the folks coming for the first time, because I mentioned that earlier about feeling out of the loop, especially if somebody who's traveling solo. They are a small cider maker. They don't have a whole team to kind of hang out at night with and go out. What does the ACA do to set up for that, or not only just like meetings, but any kind of contact during the conference? Is there any team members paying attention and setting up those networkings, saying, hey, you're new from, I don't know, Arkansas, and you want to meet somebody to talk about this particular apple? I know that person. So how's that taking place there?
Yeah, so we've really each year increasingly put an emphasis on trying to make first timers feel welcome and included at CiderCon. And this effort has been championed by the American Cider Association's Anti Racism, Equity, and Inclusion Committee because they want to make sure that people that are coming to CiderCon for the first time feel welcome. So it started, in Virginia, and then we did it last year, and then this year it's going to be an even bigger event, but it's our newcomer networking event. And this event is really targeted at helping people meet not only other newcomers, but also cider veterans that have been in the cider community and attended CiderCon for a long time, right at the get go. So we're really working to foster those connections early so that people do feel like they have a cohort of people that they can connect with. Also, the ACA staff and the ACA board are all on the app. And I get messages all week long like, I don't have anything to do tonight. Is there anybody having dinner? And I connect them with like a board member who's maybe got dinner plans with other people attending CiderCon or something along those lines. So we definitely want people to feel welcome. I have spoken to people who went to one CiderCon, didn't know anyone there, didn't make any friends, and never came back. And that is that was a
It's a
while
tragedy.
ago. It
Yeah.
was years ago. It's so sad, right?
Hmm.
Because like
Hmm.
you and I would have, our personalities would have been
Yeah.
like, let's
Come on.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
Wow. Hmm.
that's like my message to people is if you find yourself alone and not connecting with people, reach out to me on the app, reach out to Ria on the app. Like we want to foster community at CiderCon,
Yeah.
and we're happy to do it however we can. We Last year we had a sober event. I will say it was not well attended, but
Oh,
we'll
interesting.
probably do that again, which
Keep it
was
open.
board games. And we're always thinking about like what sort of free, low cost, fun events can we do so that people don't feel like they have to go out to a fancy dinner in order to make friends. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be a little bit easier for us in Portland this year just because we know kind of what the available opportunities are since we most of the ACA team lives here. But if people have ideas,
Mm-hmm.
I've always wanted to go for a CiderCon run. I'm a very slow runner. If anybody wants to go run a 12-minute mile with me any day of CiderCon, I'm game.
There you
So
go. Okay, I can see the parade now heading down the street. That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's wonderful that you're doing that, and you do have the conference app, which is a
yeah.
kind of an online forum where you could post that directly. Michelle might not be able to like answer all those texts because you might get flooded by all the
Well,
participants, but
also last year we gave the app people feedback that it was really frustrating that we couldn't tag people. And so they actually updated the app. And this year you're going to be able to tag people in the social media stream on the app. So hopefully it'll feel a little more conducive to community this year.
wonderful. Fantastic. All right. So make sure that you start signing up for those cider tours now. Early
Yeah.
bird registration is open now. Let's talk a little bit about some of the tracks. You have it, there's 5 different tracks: doing business better, making amazing cider, selling more cider, growing bountiful apples, and then, as you said before, exploring cider's flavors and terroir, which is that taste, the palate. Can you talk about some like maybe key workshops out of a couple of those?
Yeah. So one of the things that's trending right now, you asked me about trends earlier,
Mm,
are co-ferments. And some of that is just because people like exploring new things. And I always remember you saying in one of the first Cider Chat episodes I ever listened to, people have been throwing other fruits in the barrel for hundreds of years.
true.
So I think it's mainstreaming a little bit now to talk about what happens when we throw other fruits in the barrel. So we've got some sessions focused on that this year. They've been really trending in media. And I think it's really important for a winemaker who's making wine and cider to be able to co-ferment those things. And not a lot of, there's not a lot of information about how those things interact with each other. So exploring that. So we've got a breaking boundaries session that's specifically exploring cider hybrids with beer and grape wine. And on that session, we've got Christine Hardy from Riley Cider in BC, Ryan Burke from formerly Angry Orchard, now working on his own label, Johan from Pomologic in Sweden, Tom Oliver from Oliver Cider in the UK, Kathleen Sherry from Calchi in Vermont, and Tariq from Revel Cider in Ontario. So it's a huge, huge panel, but
That's a big
it's going to
panel.
be
Wow.
really, really exciting. Yeah. So that one I'm excited about. And then, it, like I said, there's something for everyone at CiderCon. So, just to kind of like highlight the diversity, we also have something where we're doing our first live reenactment of how to pitch chain retail. So if you're a small cidery that maybe wants to pitch
Okay.
like a local chain in maybe just in your state, it like how to do that. There's a whole like step by step process that you have to do to kind of fit the mold of what they are expecting. And so Julie Rhodes from Not Your Hobby Marketing and two seasoned sales professionals from Two Town Cider are going to do a live reenactment and then dissect it with the audience. So I'm really excited about that one.
That sounds
Uh,
like a role play. When you say live reenactment, that's like they're going to
oh,
role play, right?
role play. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're gonna
okay. All
role
right.
play.
Live reenactment. I'm thinking, I don't know, Lexington and Concord. But
Oh,
yeah, just so we know. Yeah, that sounds great. That'd be a lot of
yeah,
fun. Wonderful.
yeah. So I'm excited about that one. And then we don't have all the speakers finalized yet for the orcharding track, which falls under the Growing Bountiful Apples. But I am excited that Mike Biltonen's coming back. And he's going to be talking about biodynamic orcharding. And I will just tease that we have some exciting announcements coming up for that track. So stay tuned for that. But, you know, really the diversity of the content. Hopefully that kind of shows it there a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
And shout
Fantastic.
out to our partners at Cider Institute of North America. They help us curate the production track, and we couldn't do it without them.
That's
So,
great. Yeah, it takes a lot of apples to make an orchard.
yeah.
All right. And is there a keynote speaker?
We're doing something a little different this year. We're going to have a couple different keynote speakers with shorter, almost like TED Talk style
Oh,
sessions.
cool.
And then we're also going to have a keynote panel that's going to talk about the state of the cider industry. So we're mixing it up. We'll see how it goes. So stay tuned for those announcements as well.
Wonderful. So exciting. All righty. I want to get to another topic. There's a lot of speakers coming from Sweden and Norway attending CiderCon. Also the UK. Is this in keeping with highlighting a specific country or region as in the past? Will there be
Yeah,
specific tasting sessions with these individuals, these brands?
Yeah, so what you're mentioning is CiderCon's tradition of featuring an international cider community at CiderCon, just to foster, um, you know, education between different cider making regions. And we took a little bit of a break from it, but this year we put out an RFP to actually get countries to apply to be the guest speaker at CiderCon. And we got this really intriguing joint application from Sweden and Norway. So, yes, there's a big contingent coming. There's 3 producers from Sweden and 3 producers from Norway. They have other people that are coming as part of their group, but it's in total 6 producers, and all 6 producers will be featured in the ticketed tasting session for the Nordic approach to cider making. And people are very excited about this cider revolution that's happening that part of the world right now. So I'm thrilled to get to meet them all in person and taste their cider and learn more about what's going on, including coming to CiderCon from Norway is Abram from Cider Riot, which used to be a Portland cidery. And he moved to Norway and he makes cider in Norway now. And so now he's coming back to attend CiderCon, and people will be able to taste his cider, which is called Tall Ship, made in Norway, but they'll taste it here at Cider Share, which is our welcome reception. So, what Cider Share is a ticketed event, but it's not very expensive. And all the Norwegian and Swedish cider makers will be there, as well as cider makers from all around the country in North America. I think we're going to have 60 or 70 cider makers. That's on Wednesday night. That's a do not miss.
Yeah, you can't miss this. 2 sessions, right?
No,
Typically?
just one.
Just one
That was
session.
just,
Oh,
yeah, two
good.
sessions was just a pandemic mitigation. So we're,
Okay.
we're excited to be back in the big room
In the
together.
big room, yeah. And talk about like just up leveling your whole palate to be able to taste it with the
Yeah.
makers in a really, colleague type of format. It's wonderful in that way. Great. All right. Well, the CiderCon has a lot of focus on international makers and guests coming in. But I hear a little murmur from makers wondering, like, well, what does this say about the American market? If there's so many international speakers at CiderCon, what does that tell us about the state of cider in the USA?
Yeah, so I think that that's a perception that is maybe like if you do the numbers, it's not really there. So we have between 85 and 95 speakers every year at CiderCon. And this year we've got 6 from non Nordic countries, and then we've got the Nordic contingent. And, because we work with our partners at the Cider Institute of North America, they work in a North American scope. So we do frequently have Canadian speakers. Um, and, we are really excited to feature a lot of amazing American cider makers as well. CiderCon in a few years ago, it started to be a lot of the same faces over and over again. And we can get in trouble with that with international speakers as well. So it's something we kind of have to always check ourselves on is, are we keeping the content high level and fresh and interesting? And we've got some international folks coming this year that have never been to CiderCon before. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, I mean, ideally we would be featuring people that present information that hasn't been presented before, which gets harder and easier. Easier because things change, so there's always new information to present. Harder because CiderCon, it has been happening for a while now. The first CiderCon was in 2011. And I like to exaggerate a little bit and say in a field in Salem, Oregon. It wasn't quite in a field, but it definitely had that vibe to it, from what I hear. So yeah, I would say I would reframe that rather than, what does it say about the state of the American cider industry? It says that the American cider industry is like the envy of the world. And there's a lot of people clamoring to be a part of it, from countries all over the world. And I would also encourage people to reach out with their cider making expertise and angles. I think that happens a lot earlier than people realize. So I just want to put out
what is that? What happens earlier?
The RFP for
Okay.
CiderCon presentations. So it'll get released in February and we close it at the end of May. So it is really much earlier. I'm getting a lot of emails right now asking to speak at CiderCon 2024. And unfortunately it's too late, but 25, I'd love to talk to you. And you know, I'm always inspired by the cider makers that I meet out and about. And I'm always asking people to speak at CiderCon when I learn kind of about their fresh perspective or their fresh angle on making cider. So I would say the more diversity of our speakers, the better. And let's keep the U.S. cider community front and center. Absolutely.
All righty. And is there a final toast? I remember in 2016 in Portland, there was a toast, and it actually was featuring UK cider makers that year. Neil Worley, Tom Oliver, and I'm at a loss for the third or fourth other person. And then there was a final toast with everybody in the room. It kind of closes it. Is there going to be anything like that this year, or how does that work? I know like last year there was something in the bar at the hotel, but maybe it's going to be different that way.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of feedback that people miss the closing toast. We haven't quite figured out how to support that, because cider makers really love to drink cider. And so it was really hard to get y'all out of the room. And it got to the point where the hotel was like turning off the lights. And you guys continued to party in that room.
You guys, wait a minute, Michelle, accept. Come on.
Me?
I'm
talking to your listeners. I'm talking to your listeners.
That's true. I'm one of those people that they have to push out of the room.
They're like partying in the room with the lights completely off for like half an hour. And let's just say the union labor is not a fan of that closing session. So we are exploring some other options, but I will say that there are a lot of cool events happening at Oregon Cider Week. So, hopefully you'll still find awesome things to do on Friday. And there's stuff happening on Saturday too. There's a wassail, and there's a like a mini elevated cider summit happening. I think Alan Shapiro is calling that Artisan Cider Summit. And yeah, so I'm not sure yet.
All right.
TBD.
All right. We'll keep on watching. Is there any tips from Michelle? Any must attend, do not miss? You kind of mentioned a couple things like the cider share. Anything else that you'd say, if you're coming for the first time or even if you've been coming for a long time?
Yeah, the trade show happy hour on Thursday night.
Yeah, good point.
Um, it like we've really worked to add games to CiderCon, and last year we had this Apple game, and you'd take the elevator, and there would be people riding the elevator up and down because they were bargaining over like
Yes.
trading Apple cards. I mean,
Yes.
it was so much fun.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do that again. We're gonna do a different riff on it. I don't have the exact rules in front of me, but we're gonna have more games. There's going to be a pinball tournament because we have a pinball vendor coming, so there's going to be a pinball tournament. Um,
Wow.
and
Sign me
uh,
up. Great.
I know, right? That
I
sounds
love
so much
that.
fun. And I would say, do not miss the ACA CEO getting an Apple tattoo at the tattoo bus on the trade show floor.
What?
So, yeah.
A
Ria,
real tattoo?
a
Like,
real tattoo. Come on, Ria, let's do it together.
no, I want to be able to go to the saunas in Japan.
Okay.
I'm very delicate.
Yes, there's a tattoo bus coming. We really want to make the trade show feel like almost an extension of Cider Share and just more about community. And our vendors, man, you should talk to some of these CiderCon vendors about CiderCon and how much they love it because it's just got a different vibe. Um, and then the TTB boot camp or the CINA boot camp, those are really in-depth classes on Wednesday. And I think a lot of time people show up on Tuesday because they want to attend Cider Share on Wednesday, but they're not really sure what to do on
Hmm.
Wednesday. There's actually a couple options. So
That's great.
even if you've been in the business for a long time, I recommend going to the TTB boot camp.
Yeah, I would say like this Portland CiderCon is really queuing up to be quite the event in terms of the whole city. What you're talking about with the Northwest Cider Association, what the ACA is doing, it's pretty exciting. So anybody who's kind of sitting on the fence and looking at the schedule and saying, "I've learned all that already,"
Yeah.
I don't think so. There's
Yeah.
always something more to learn and kind of perfect and to talk with other people. And of course, you'll get to see Michelle and yeah, that's really exciting too. We're going to say goodbye for now to all the listeners out there in Ciderville and thank you for everything that you do as the CEO for the American Cider Association. And we wish you the best of luck. And we hope to see everybody coming up in January 16th and the 19th, 2024 in Portland, Oregon.
Yes, I can't wait to host you all in the Rose City.
The Road City?
Rose.
Rose. I was going to say, okay, Rose. Yeah. Now I'll get a tattoo of that and an apple. All right. You convinced me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ria.
There might be some of you out there in Ciderville saying, it's too expensive. I can't go. I can't take the time away. I just want to remind you that there's probably a really good chance that you got into cider making because you thought, what a fun freaking time that's going to be to make a product like that and to be in that community. How awesome. So CiderCon is kind of like your moment. This is your time to not only just network, but to give yourself a little bit of a pat on the back and say, I deserve this. I deserve to go out, go to some workshops. Maybe I've seen this before, but you probably haven't tasted some of the ciders that are coming in on those tasting sessions and have met those folks. That's a way to network and just energize you. I know that is a thing for small business owners and big business owners alike. Anybody who's working really hard, this is your moment to take that pause and say, I've gotten that far. It's something that you want to be budgeting into your yearly annual budget. Like set it up so that you don't miss out, because the worst thing possible is cider FOMO. I even have a t-shirt there at the Cider Chat swag shop called Cider FOMO. This is your opportunity to say, that's why I got into this, not to just be working every single day in the cidery and canning and now the damn tractor breaks. Oh my gosh, the kegging system's messed up. I got to buy bottles. I got to do bills. I got to do invoices. It will never end. It's like owning a house or owning a boat. Like it's always something. But we got into our different industries because You're excited to be part of that industry, part of that product. So this is your moment to shine and give yourself a little bit of credit that you made it that far. Get up in the morning and say it every day. I deserve this. Hope to see you at CiderCon 2024.
Walking through the orchards.
While on the topic of deserving something, one thing I like to do always when I get a chance, especially if you've made it this far in the podcast, is to give a tip of the glass and a little notification that there are brands out there supporting this podcast each and every month via the Cider Chat Patreon page. And they are signed up at the Cider Going Up campaign page. You want to check that out at ciderchat.com. It's all gotten new and fancy and even more info than ever. Let's go down this line, and I want to really encourage you to check these brands out, because by supporting them, you also inadvertently help to support Cider Chat. We have Duck Chicken, based in London, Spacetime Mead and Cider Works in Dunmore, Pennsylvania, Insider Japan, Japan's first and only bilingual magazine covering the cider universe, Esoterra Cider Works in Dolores, Colorado, Taddy Bogle Cider Works in Acme, Pennsylvania, Bent Ladder Cider and Wine in Doylestown, Ohio, Press Then Press, a family-driven online hub from Seattle, Washington, and the American Cider Association, well, you've been hearing all about that, and Ross on Wye Cider and Perry Company, based in Ross on Wye in the UK. And I heard that Albert Johnson is going to be at CiderCon 2024. And if you've been following this podcast for a while, you've heard me talk about the Ross Cider Fest. I've had the Johnsons on the podcast. That's episode 194. It's both with Mike and Albert. Just an amazing family, and what a beautiful orchard, both apples and pears. Albert is going to be speaking on a panel all about Perry at CiderCon, which makes it another good reason to sign up for that event. Either way, these folks deserve a whole bunch of credit, along with all the other fine patrons at the Cider Chat Patreon page. Become a patron today. Just Google Cider Chat and Patreon. That's spelled Patreon. And with that, I leave you here. This is Ria Windcaller signing off for now. Looking forward to seeing you in Ciderville.
We drink it like this. There is a reason why we do it like this. There is a reason why we do it like this. There is a reason why we do it like this. There is a reason why we drink it like this. There is a reason why we do it like this.
Yeehaw!